Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, all the aspirants present here. Ma'am, you can start sharing your PPT. We
Hello.
can. Hello, ma'am. Am I
Yeah.
audible? Ma'am,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can.
you're audible, Sana. Thank you. And wish you all participants a very good evening. Hope you have answered the questions well. And without wasting much more time, I would like to start the debriefing session on environmental hazards and toxicology. So I shall be describing the questions and the answers with explanations. If you have any doubts, we can take the questions at the end of the session. Sana, is that okay with you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's begin. So, yes, the first question. A 27-year-old woman with a history of depression and chronic pain is found unresponsive after an apparent suicide attempt. Multiple empty pill bottles, including fluoxetine, amitriptyline, and oxycodone, are found at her bedside. She is intubated in the field and brought to the emergency department where a critical care consultation is performed. Urine drug screen is positive for opiates and tetrahydrocannabinol. Non-contrast head CT scan is unremarkable. Vital signs: heart rate 120 beats per minute, blood pressure 90 by 50, respiration 24 breaths per minute. Temperature signs are 37.2 degrees Celsius and oxygen saturation 100% on FiO2 of 1. ECG reveals the following intervals: PR 140 milliseconds, corrected QT 500 milliseconds, and QRS 180 milliseconds. So, which of the following intervention is most indicated for this patient? Option A, naloxone; option B, flumazenil; option C, sodium bicarbonate; and option D, cyproheptadine; option E, supportive therapy. So, the answer is definitely C, sodium bicarbonate. The patient likely ingested amitriptyline, which is a tricyclic antidepressant agent. Key ECG findings in TCA toxicity include wide QRS, QT prolongation, tachycardia with hypotension. TCS block fast sodium channels in myocardial tissue, causing conduction delay and ventricular arrhythmias. Sodium bicarbonate is indicated because it narrows the QRS duration, improves hypotension, reduces the risk of ventricular arrhythmias, and it alkalinizes the serum and reduces TCA binding to sodium channels. Now, naloxone, it's used in opioid overdose. Flumazenil, used in benzodiazepine toxicity, but please be careful to avoid flumazenil if benzodiazepine is co-ingested with tricyclic antidepressants. Cyproheptadine, used in case of serotonin syndrome. Supportive therapy alone is insufficient with a QRS of 180 milliseconds, which is quite significantly prolonged. Coming to question number 2. The following reduce the risk of electrical injury in the ICU except A. Mains isolating transformer, B. Earth leakage circuit breaker, C. Use of a common earth, D. Ensuring that the patient has a good earth connection, E. Use of class 2 equipment. So, option D is the correct one. Patient in ICU should not be directly earthed because this increases the risk of macro or micro electrical shock. Protective strategies include isolation transformers, which isolate ICU circuit from main supply, earth leakage circuit breaker, which interrupts the current leakage, common earth systems, which equalizes the potential, class 2 equipment, which double insulates. Therefore, deliberately ensuring the patient has an earth connection is unsafe. Question number 3. A 48-year-old woman is rescued from a house fire during which she was trapped in a smoke-filled bedroom for 30 minutes. On arrival in the ER, she has marked facial burns and a hoarse voice, but no stridor. She is expectorating carbonaceous sputum, appears confused, and has a cherry red visage. Which statement is false? Option A, early intubation is advisable. Option B, a significant thermal injury to the trachea is likely. Option C, lavage with sodium bicarbonate 1.4% has a role in the management of this patient. Option D, lung function is likely to worsen over the next 12 hours. Option E, a cherry red visage has several causes other than carbon monoxide poisoning. So correct one is option B. Significant thermal injury to the trachea is likely. Why? Inhalational injury from house fires usually causes upper airway thermal injury, lower airway chemical injury, and carbon monoxide poisoning. However, significant tracheal thermal injury is uncommon because inspired air cools rapidly, upper airway structures absorb moist heat. Other statements amongst the options are correct. Early intubation is recommended due to progressively increasing airway edema. Pulmonary function worsens within 12 to 24 hours. Cherry red appearance may occur in carbon monoxide poisoning but also other conditions. Nebulized bicarbonate lavage has been studied for soot inhalation. Question number 4. A 54-year-old man presents with septic shock due to left lower extremity cellulitis with methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus bacteremia. He develops respiratory failure that requires intubation and is placed on mechanical ventilation. The ICU team starts fentanyl infusion at 250 microgram per hour and clonazepam infusion at 10 milligram per hour for analgesic sedation. 4 days later, he develops metabolic acidosis, new onset renal failure, and an osmolar gap. Which of the following substances is the most likely explanation for the new metabolic derangements? So, what is the option? Option A, ethylene glycol. Option B, isopropyl alcohol. Option C, cyanide. Option D, methanol. Option E, propylene glycol. Correct answer. So, correct answer is option E, propylene glycol. Lorazepam infusion contain propylene glycol as a solvent. Large doses can lead to high anion gap metabolic acidosis, osmolar gap renal failure with hyperlactatemia. This syndrome is known as propylene glycol toxicity. Now coming to the other options, ethylene glycol or methanol leads to toxic alcohol ingestion. Isopropyl alcohol leads to ketosis without acidosis. Cyanide leads to lactic acidosis without any osmolar gap.